Welcome back to another episode here of Outdoor Reality. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different than the past couple episodes. Today we're going to take a look at antler growth for three different deer that we've had here on private property. And we're just going to go through the antler growth. So stay tuned and let's get the episode started. Alright, so starting off here, the episode, the one nice thing about being able to hunt private property is over the years you tend to gather history with particular deer, and it's interesting to me, and I'm sure it might be interesting to you to see the antler growth through the years, which deer you think have potential and don't show it, and which deer you don't think have potential but really show it. So that's what we're going to do today. We're just going to dive into three different deer that we have. One deer we have 4 years of history with. The other two deer we have 3 years of history with. All right, so the first buck we're going to look at is this mainframe 10-pointer. Very symmetrical deer. As you can see, he's got short G2s, long G3s. And by no means am I a aging expert of deer of any sort. All I can go off of is what I've researched and what I've seen from other people. I would classify this buck as a 3.5-year-old here the first year we noticed him. Feel free to comment down below. Like I said, I'm no expert. So beautiful 10-pointer, short brows, super nice looking deer. I'm sure anybody would be glad to harvest this buck. But what would this deer look like in year 2? And to me, that's the really cool thing about having history with bucks, is over the years you can see their antler growth, whether they decline, get better, or don't make any jump at all. But for this particular deer, he made a pretty good jump in year 2 that we saw him. So here he is, year 2. And again, we start picking this buck up in the early part of the year during velvet. And boy, did he looks pretty impressive now. He's still a mainframe 10. But you could tell he's got some more length on him, on those tines. The G2s are still shorter than the G3s. He threw a little kicker point off his G3 on the right side. On the left side, he tries to get a 6th point going, but it's a little too short to be considered a point. But he looks very impressive from the front. Brow tines, he's trying to throw a little bit of a split off the right brow tine. He's wide. He's pretty much got everything that you would look for in a world-class deer. He's got tine length. He's got the width. He's got the points. He is just a true, beautiful looking deer. And I would say he definitely grew a good bit from the first year to the second year. First year I had him probably in the 125, 140 range. Now I'm thinking maybe in the 140 to the 155 range. Again, anybody would be honored to harvest this deer at this point of his life, for sure, no doubt. But you could tell just in a year of survival, he's grown X amount of inches, put on more body weight, still growing antlers. Thickness wise, he's a little bit thicker than he was in year 1. It would have been really sweet to see this deer from the stand. Unfortunately, again, just like year 1, we were not able to lay eyes on this deer. All right, now moving on to year 3 of this buck. Unfortunately, the buck disappeared on us. We were really excited to see what he was going to do in year 3. Unfortunately, never had the opportunity. And then fast forward to year 4. Again, like year 3, never had a trail cam video of him in year 4. And then we got word from a neighbor down the road a ways. They had actually harvested this buck later on in year 4. Unfortunately, couldn't recover him during hunting season, lost the blood trail. Then they eventually found him early on the next year during shed season, and boy, he was as impressive as I thought he was going to be. The further he got on with life, as you can see here, they had a couple trail cam photos of him. He is a really just gnarly looking deer, and at this point, year 3, he would have been 5.5. This being year 4, I had him at 6.5. You could tell he's just a monster of a buck. You could tell he's at that old age. He's still got the short G2s. However, they're really shorter now compared to year 1. But his G3, excuse me, his G3s have grown exponentially. He's got a 6th point on that right side. He's got a split brow on the left side, and the brow tines are definitely way shorter than year 1. But look at the thickness. He has thickness throughout all his tines. The beams, he carries his thickness all the way out. And this is just a truly giant whitetail. Going into year 1, when I first saw him, I knew that he had potential to be something special. It turns out, 4 years later, he turned out to be a really awesome buck. The neighbors did score this buck. He came in at 178 and an eighth. He had everything you would hope for. He had mass, he had width, he had tine length. The beams, respectively, both beams were around 22 inches a piece. The right antler measured 77 and an eighth, and then the left antler had measured 75 and 3/8. He did have some abnormal points. Obviously, he had multiple points coming off his base. So he ended up totaling 178 and an eighth. And going from year 1, where he was a 125 to 140 in my books, to getting the official score 4 years later at 178 and an eighth, this buck was truly special, and he lived up to his potential, no doubt about it. Now let's move on to buck number 2. This was another buck we had multiple years of history with. Here's the first year that we noticed this buck. As you can see, the mainframe 8-pointer, he's got, I would call it a basket rack. He's kind of like a basket rack 8. He's got long beams, that's for sure. His tine length is pretty normal. He's got really short brow tines, but overall he looks like he may be something. To me, the first year we noticed this deer, I would age him at 1.5 years. Could he have potential? Absolutely. 1.5 years old 8-pointer with that kind of beam length and tine length could be something special. Fast forward to year 2, we have video of this deer. Again, he came around velvet. We had velvet videos of him. He continued throughout the year. Year 2, you could tell he definitely got wider a little bit. He threw out another point on his left side, so now he's a mainframe 9. Tine length grew, beam length grew. The brow tines did not grow though. That was the one thing that stayed consistent from year 1 to year 2, was that brow tine length. Everything else, he gained some inches width-wise, tine length-wise. He added another point. Again, going in now to year 2, I believe this deer is 2.5 years old. Still has long legs, has got a slender body. He was very active during daylight hours throughout the year. He just was a young-looking deer to me, so I had him at 2.5. So after year 2 was complete, we went shed hunting, and we're fortunate enough to find his left side antler. Here it is here. As you could tell, it's a pretty young deer. Here's that other point that he grew from year 1 to year 2. Good tine length. G2s and G3s are about the same in length. He's got a super long beam that swoops up. Gave him some inches there. He didn't score very high. This antler here is 35-40. So if you put both matching sides together, he was probably around I would say 90-100 inch deer. Again, kind of contributes to his age a little bit. He's a young deer. This would be his 2.5-year-old antler. But just cool find to have. Never saw him during hunting season, but had multiple trail cam videos of him throughout the season. And then fast forward to year 3. Again, velvet pictures of this buck. Now going into year 3, I believe he's 3.5 years old. And again, he shows great tine length growth along with width growth. He threw on a 5th point on the right side, so now he's a mainframe 10 pointer. He still has that little G4 on the left side antler, but he's got a really good looking G4 on the right side that he threw on. I believe his beam length grew from year 2 to year 3. He still has that same antler growth of the swooped up beams. Brow tine length did not really happen again in year 3. He had really short brow tines year 3. He just never really grew brow tines from year 1. They stayed the same. But everything else, his tine length, his width, his beam length, all increased year after year. He went from probably maybe 90 to 100 in year 2 to now jumping up to possibly a 115 to 130, somewhere in that range in my estimate. And we were starting to get some trail cam videos of him, and he was limping. At first it wasn't bad. As time went on, it got worse. And we had our last trail cam video of this buck. He was limping really bad, and he kind of just walked off out of the frame and never saw this buck again. And it was really unfortunate because he definitely was one that we had history with. He was on his path to great potential. Maybe was it a 178 potential? Probably wasn't, but he was showing good growth throughout. Could have ended up maybe at a 140, 145 in 2 years. Who knows? We really don't know, but he was on a good trajectory. He increased his inches every year. For that buck, he showed great consistent growth year after year after year. And that's one cool thing about, again, being able to have history of the buck. You can see their growth over the years. And this buck definitely had consistent growth throughout the years. He kept his form. He really didn't stagger away from his shape of the antlers. They stayed consistent. And that's the thing I can come out about saying about this buck, was he was a very consistent grower year after year. Wasn't going to be a high scoring buck, but he definitely would have been a trophy for anybody to harvest. And it's an unfortunate end for that buck. So now we move on to another buck. Alright, now here moving on to the third and final buck. Let's take a look at him. Here he is. He's a mainframed 8-pointer. He's got long tine length. He's got long beams. He's got great width. He's got long brow tines. And in my opinion, this buck is 3.5 years old in year 1 when we discover him. To me, being a mainframe 8-pointer, 3.5 years old, great looking deer. I thought this deer was gonna be, he was just gonna blow up into something special. He had it all being a young deer. We roll into year 2. We start picking up velvet photos of this buck. As he continues his antler growth through velvet and throughout the year, he starts to grow some extra points off both antlers. Actually, he throws off a G4 on both sides, and making him now a mainframe 10 pointer. They weren't very big. Now he's become a mainframe 10, and he's got a kicker off his right G2, and that was coming out of velvet. And then the rut starts to hit, and now we start getting photos of him. He's busted off his G3 on the left side. He's got his G3 on his right side that's cracked off. So he really took a hit during the rut. And it's funny because year prior he came in during after the rut and he looked perfectly fine. He was a clean 8. Now fast forward to year 2, he breaks off some points. He was all busted up by the end of the season. So now we come into year 3. We don't get a velvet photo of him, but we do pick up a photo of, or a video of him in October. He's hard horned, and this is what he looked like. He comes in, he's a mainframed 9-pointer now. On the left side is really short. Tine length on the right side is decent. The only real long point on the left side is the G2. Brow tines are still very impressive lengthwise. And then on his right side, he throws out another kicker, but this time, instead of being on the top of the tine, it's down at the bottom of the tine. And you can see from the side, he's got a little bit of trash coming off the bases. And at this point, being year 3, I have this buck now at 5.5. And really, from going from year one, this is not what I had pictured him looking like in year three. Again, he's got a few broken points off after the rut, so obviously he's a fighter. Another thing about the antlers is the thickness. It pretty much stayed consistent from year 1, 2, and 3. Year 4, we were lucky enough to have him on trail camera. We didn't have any velvet photos of him. We had very little video of him. He did come in during October. We did pick up a few videos of him, and he definitely looks a little different. He's back to mainframe 10-point status. However, he has thrown off kickers off his right G2 again. This time it's more kind of halfway up the tine. Then on the left side, he throws off, it's a split G2 on the left side. He's got a kicker on his G3 on the left side. He's got, again, tall brow tines, but he's got a really unique point coming off his base, off his right base. And this deer is just, he's pretty cool at this point. I mean, he's got kickers, he's got tine length. He's just a cool looking deer. And at this point, he would be, in my view, a 6.5-year-old buck. Like I said, we got minimal video of him that year. He hit a couple cameras, and then that was it, and we never saw him again. But just the progression, once again, for this deer, completely different for the previous 2 deer that we saw. And that's kind of what this episode was all about, is just to see how unique each deer is and how each deer is different, completely different. I mean, this deer here, the 3rd deer we looked at, he went from an 8 to a 9 to a 10. He grew kickers, he grew a split, dagger points. He was just all over the place. He went from a wide variety. The only thing that did not change was his thickness. I believe he stayed pretty thin throughout. Never really got to that thickness point, but he started growing other points. He was just a cool, unique deer. And I don't know if that was just genetics, or maybe he had an injury of some sort, or he had some kind of disease that didn't fatally kill him, but definitely you could tell his antler growth definitely suffered from it. But as the later he got, that left side, those tine points really didn't grow at all. They pretty much stayed the same. And who knows what contributed to that? Could have been just his genetics. From year 1, where we first saw him, I thought he had the great potential to be a really nice looking deer. Didn't think he was going to go through the progressions that he did, but at the end of it, he still turned out to be a really cool, nice deer to be able to harvest. And again, anybody would be honored to harvest him at that point in his life cycle. The 2nd buck we looked at, he was an 8-pointer, consistently progressed. Tine length, width, beams, he just stayed true to who he was. The 1st buck we saw at 3.5, mega potential, 10-point width, tine length, and he eventually got to that giant buck status. He lived up to his potential, coming in at 178 1/8. So the moral of this video is just how different each deer is, and you don't know really the potential of any deer. You could say you do, but in the long term, it could turn out to be a bust. And it's kind of like gambling. You take a risk on a deer, you put all your chips in on that deer to be a great deer. Down the road, he really didn't turn out to what you thought he would be. So the moral of the story is each deer is different. Each deer has their own unique characteristics. Kind of like humans, every human's different, growth wise. So it's just really cool to see 3 different deer on the same property and the progression of their antler growth. To me, that's really cool, and that's kind of why I wanted to share this video with you, because I'm sure some of you out there think that's pretty cool too. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Hopefully you learned something or had a good time viewing the video. Like always, if you like the video, hit that like button. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can type them down below. And hit that subscribe button to stay in tune with the channel. Our goal, we're trying to get to 500 subscribers by the end of the year. So I'd appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. And also let me know, it's kind of a new video style. Let me know if you like the video, if you'd be interested in seeing some more deer. I do have some more deer in mind. Thank you for watching, and remember, there's no better reality than outdoor reality.